Hello, and welcome to our continuation of the discussion of the historical context of HCI. Last time we talked about it briefly. We'll continue that conversation today, just as soon as I get it to where it's going to move. The slides that we'll be going over are taken from the book Human Computer Interaction by Scott McKinsey. Dr. McKinsey does a great job with this topic, and it's an excellent book. We've moved on to around 1982, whenever the ACM SIG Chi Special Interest Group, is what SIG stands for, was formed. And it is notable for several reasons in 1983. First, the first that conference, right, it was the first conference was held, and the group was formed. There was a book published called The Psychology of Human-Computer Interaction by Card, Morin, and Newell. And then also the Macintosh, Apple Macintosh, was announced via a brochure just prior to its launch. Going over the mission of ACM SIG Chi, it's a special interest group specializing around or focused on computer human interaction in the world's largest association of professionals in the research practice and practice of computer human interaction. It's an interdisciplinary group comprised of computer scientists, software engineers, psychologists, and so on, just as we've talked about in the past, a very interdisciplinary sort of field. Um, they're brought together by shared understanding that designing useful and usable technology is an interdisciplinary process, and believe that when it's done properly, it has the power to transform people's lives. This is the SIGCHI website, taken from Wikipedia. The number of publications per year, and as you can see, the submissions continues to grow up to over 2,000, 2,500 sort of submissions over the past few years. So still a very thriving sort of society. Back to 83 and its importance. This is also that the book that I just mentioned, The Psychology of Human-Computer Interaction. Um, and it came about from the work of Card, Morin, and Newell at Xerox PARC, which stands for Palo Alto Research Center. And it was in the Applied Information Processing Psychology Project, so AIP. And the mission of AIP was to create an applied psychology of human computer interaction by conducting requisite basic research within a context of application, and had an emphasis on modeling, an example being keystroke level modeling. Uh, and it connects low-level human processes in experimental psychology, to human interactions with computers. So one of the key things, as it mentioned, was around modeling, and one of the models is the model of a human as the processor, and it basically is a framework for analysis of model human processor. So you have your vision and your hearing sensory inputs, so your eyes and your ears, that are input that go to the processor. The brain is the processor, short-term memory as well as long-term memory, all in one place. And then your arm, hands, and fingers are your motor responses, so your actuators and so on. A visual of that sort of model shows that we have a long-term memory, potentially being infinite and so on, and then various other ways of quantifying both the cognitive processor, the auditory image store, and so on. The whole point of these sort of things was to be able to create some sort of a model, a formula, a mechanism to be able to do experimentation. So if in the case of the example that we're seeing here, a user is shown two images or two symbols, one at a time, so one following the other. And if the second one is the same as the first one, they're to push the key labeled yes. Otherwise, they're to push no. So what is the time between when they see that image, between the signal and the response of when they actually hit the yes key? So that's an example, and what the reason to do that is to get down to a number, the response time, and then be able to figure out through experimentation what affects that response time. Do it on enough people with enough different UIs or changes to whatever, then you can determine if something is better or worse. We still see things like that today, or you could still do that sort of thing today, and I'm sure people are doing it, which is how long does it take to enter the word computer on a smartphone using prediction or word completion. And you start off, as with most of these predictive models, based upon what you've typed, what is the things you're likely to be typing, and you could determine pretty quickly of does one do better or worse than the other. Also, they've gotten smarter. Today, they listen to your what you type and figure out based upon what you're likely to type. And whenever you correct it because it guessed wrong, it learns, and so it eventually over time gets to where it predicts your typing better, not just typing in general, but very much focused on you as a user. 1984 was also a very important year because of the Apple Macintosh. Um, and it was introduced in a 60-second commercial, lots of hoopla and marketing fanfare, and it's the first successful computer with a graphical user interface and a point and select interaction. Um, it was inspired and influenced by Xerox Star, uh, following Apple designers' attendance at the NCC in 1981 when the Star was released or previewed, and it gave them a lot of interesting ideas. Taking a look at the Macintosh timeline, go back to 1976. That's when the company was founded. 77, they launched the Apple II, and it sells for $1,300 with 4K of RAM, and it was very successful. We think of that today, 4K of RAM. Your mouse driver is using significantly more than that. So it's not much memory, but it was a lot back then, especially given it was text based, so you didn't necessarily have as high of computational requirements. In 78, they started on the Lisa project with the goal of producing a powerful but expensive personal computer, and the expense was part of the problem. 79, they start in September the Macintosh project, and the goal is to produce a low cost, easy to use computer for the average consumer. And so in December of 79, Apple and Xerox come up with an agreement that allows Xerox to invest in Apple, and in return, Apple's engineers can visit PARC and see Xerox Alto and get some ideas around the GUI that influenced both the Lisa and the Macintosh. In 1980, Apple goes public. And makes with an IPO, and I'm sure that was very good for Xerox because it was a very successful IPO. In '81, Xerox launches the Star at the NCC National Computer Conference, and the Lisa design team are present, do demos. They did decide to revamp the interface to be icon based, following probably the learnings from Xerox. It was highly successful, uh, but embodies text-based. In August of that same year, IBM launches the IBM PC, and it was incredibly successful, but it was a traditional text-based command line interface. And then in '82, Lisa and Macintosh development continue, but the two projects, rather than being collaborative and so on, developed a sense of competition. And in January of '83, the Lisa was released, and it incorporated a GUI, a mouse, and it sells for $10,000. And $10,000 in 1983 was a lot of money, still a lot of money, but it was considerably much more than what we would think of it today. Basically, that's a business class price tag for some very specific type users. The typical home user wouldn't think of that. That's more than certainly more than a car would have been back then. But in December of that same year, Apple distributes brochures of the Macintosh in various magazines, including Time. '84 in January, Macintosh plays their ad on the Super Bowl, and then they release and start selling the Mac in January of 24th. And so it sells for around 2,500, which, while still a fair amount of money, was attainable for many people. It wasn't out of reach as 10,000 would have been. And in 2022, uh, the 40th anniversary of the Chai special interest group, and examples of early HCI research topics include things like what menu design might be best, a breadth first or breadth sort of thing. So you go with a very wide set of menus, or more narrow and deeper and nesting of menus. And you would determine, give a user a task, how long does it take them to do the task, what percentage of accuracy, and so on. These are some of the conferences that have been sponsored, and if you take a look at some of the last ones down there, the well, in 2022, so a couple interesting ones: computing and sustainable societies, and also conversational user interfaces, so interacting with the computer via voice. So some interesting evolution, and also relevant for this course, because if you're talking to it, odds are there's some AI in the mix. So you might want to consider, and these are pretty good resources. The author of these slides is a Canadian, so that's why it's pointing at Google in Canada, do.com for the US, and so on. The ACM Digital Library is a good resource, as is the HCI bibliography. Wikipedia is a good resource, but it's not scholarly, so don't make that mistake. And then the website for the book where these slides came from is there as well. And again, Dr. McKenzie's book is an excellent resource, something to consider reading. And with that, if you have any questions, let me know. Feel free to reach out with email, text, whatever. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. As always, stay safe, and I'll talk with you soon.